The smoke of Satan.
Hello, and welcome once again to The Smoke of Satan. My name is Joseph Cillo Jr. I'm a writer of edgy Catholic fiction. I've written the thriller, When the Wood is Dry, an edgy Catholic thriller. Comes in a special Catholic edition too. It's got a little extra Catholic content, cleaner language. And my graphic novel and comic book series, Blind Prophet, and my Christmas novel, A Christmas Gift for Atheists. Merry friggin' Christmas, an edgy Christmas comedy, which comes in an audio edition and the standard edition. Okay? And we are cruising along on the Smoke of Satan. We are up to episode 11, which is the Modernist as Apologist. And just to remind you, the Smoke of Satan comes from something that St. Paul VI said. He said, we would say that through some mysterious crack. No, it's not mysterious. Through some crack, the smoke of Satan has entered the Church of God. There is doubt, uncertainty, problems, unrest, dissatisfaction, and confrontation. And I think we still have all those things, and maybe even getting to be a little bit more now. Okay? So, first I want to remind you that of traditional theology, right? Where the modernist thinking has gone wrong. Okay, so this is our little graph of our diagram of traditional theology that St. Thomas Aquinas came up with. We have natural theology, which was actually from the ancient Greeks, from Aristotle, where we have senses, and then we apply our reason to our senses, and this is knowledge. So that's the source of knowledge, and then we have our natural end where we die. Now, St. Thomas Aquinas added to this the order of grace, which is faith, and said that there's also direct revelation from God. So God reveals himself, and that's another source of knowledge, and we also have a supernatural end where we'll be judged. Now, back a few hundred years ago, these new theology came out, and it's been building since then, and they've gotten more and more aggressive. So they were repressed for a long time in the church. They called it Nouvelle Theologie, which is a French term, and ressourcement, where they were going to reread all the fathers of the church through a new modern kind of philosophy that was more agnostic than what St. Thomas Aquinas was doing. And they said that you don't need this extra order of grace, that God doesn't really reveal himself exactly to people this way. Everything you can know is through your senses, and that grace perfects nature, and faith is the perfection of reason. So theology is the perfection of philosophy. So you need this extra thing, and they took it out. And they went back and reread all the other documents. And the problem with this is when you do that, you don't get the same answers. So you no longer have the same faith that we had believed for, 1800, 1900 years. And the issue is that in Vatican II, the battle against this thinking stopped. Okay? So up until about 1960, the church is battling this back, and that's what this document, Pascendi Dominici Gregis, is from St. Pius the Tenth. It is his treatise on this synthesis of all heresies that he called it, and we're going through this document. We're going to talk today about the Modernist as Apologist. Okay, so the Modernist Apologist depends in two ways on the philosopher. Okay, so we have Pius the Tenth pointing out that this problem starts with the philosopher, who's the kind of the mastermind behind this whole thing. Okay, so he's saying here that there's First, there's indirectly, inasmuch as his theme is history dictated, as we have seen, by the philosopher, and directly, inasmuch as he takes both his laws and his principles from the philosopher. So these people are kind of thinking like these modernist philosophers. This is the prism they use to understand everything, and they force everything into this model. And you don't get the same answers that St. Thomas Aquinas had. Okay, so the new apologetics must be fed from psychological and historical sources. They have no intention of employing the data of sacred books, but real history written on modern principles. Okay? So we're no longer talking about things from the sacred scriptures that we believe were inspired by God. They've gone back, and we talked about this in previous episodes. This is what the historian does, is he goes back and he sorts out what seems to be real to him and what seems to be something that's been distorted by faith, or disfigured by faith, they call it, or transfigured by faith, changed from what really happened into something more than what really happened. And that's because of this process of disfiguring by, well-meaning people of faith, but they're changing the story, right? And the real story was something much simpler and much more ordinary and everyday, and not God at work in his creation, right? Directly, like that. So this is how they believe, and this gets filtered now into the apologist, as it's already in the historian. Okay? So the truth is to be found only in this kind of history. Okay? So this is where we find truth. We don't find truth in the Bible, right? Except that it might be historical. So we sort out anything that we don't think is historical, and we come up with this, what we think is true, the real history. Now this is heresy. You can't, I'm not saying to believe in this, okay? It's not what we want to believe, okay? The modernist as apologist, okay? So modernist apologetics. So what the modernist apologist will do is he wants to make the non-believer attain that experience of the Catholic faith. So everything is based on your experience, right? Even when you read the Bible, it's kind of you're reliving an experience from the past. Everything we learn is from experience. Again, it's all coming from our senses. So there's nothing directly coming, from God. Unless some modernists have believed that things might come directly from God, but we experience it only in our senses. So it's kind of this other way of revelation, but it's not really directly from God. We have to experience it through our senses. Okay? So the first way to consider this is the objective. Okay? So the objective experience it proceeds from agnosticism. So the Catholic religion is endowed with such vitality as to compel every psychologist and historian of good faith to recognize that its history hides some unknown element. Okay? So there's something in there that's mysterious. This is why we need God. And if you look back in previous episodes, you'll see that this is how they believe there's a need for faith. Everything that in faith responds from a need that we need to fulfill. Okay? And this religion as it exists today is that which was founded by Jesus Christ, and that's from a primitive germ. So Jesus, again, was the seed, and then we are the plant, and the plant is in the seed when it's born, so therefore what we experience as our faith actually was what Jesus intended, so because he was the seed, right? So we have this idea of a primitive germ, and then it grows into this, what we have now. I don't like the idea of my faith being something that grows like a germ. That sounds like a sickness, right? not good. Okay? So Christ announced the kingdom, and then he became the Messiah, and he was always imminent and permanent in the bosom of the church. Okay? So you see the importance of the church here as Jesus being imminent and permanent in the bosom of the church. Slowly developing in the course of history, adapting itself successively to the different mediums, borrowing from them by vital assimilation all the dogmatic, cultural, ecclesiastical forms, surmounting all the obstacles, vanquished all the enemies, and survived all assaults and all combats. So this fails to explain the whole of her history. So we have the unknown rises forth, okay? So the unknown is rising forth because we can't explain how this church is even here, right? Because of all the ways this is happening. So that means we need, there's a need for faith, okay? The primitive germ is an a priori of agnostic and evolutionist philosophy, and that the formula of it has been gratuitously invented for the sake of buttressing their position. Okay? So this, an a priori means like it's something you start with in a philosophy. It's like an assumption, right? So it isn't a truth that we've discovered. It's something that we're forcing in saying this has to be here. And then all this other stuff will follow. And they're creating it, right? To buttress their position. That's what Pius the Tenth is saying. So he's not convinced. Okay? So let's continue with the objective here. They have found that even its dogma is not exempt from errors and contradictions, which is not only excusable, but curiously enough, even right and proper. Okay? The masses understood science and history as they are expressed in these books, and it is clear that had science and history been expressed in a more perfect form, this would have proved rather a hindrance than a help. Okay. So, if the Bible had said, over billions of years, this universe was formed and it cooled and all the other things they say, about how this Big Bang happened and then and the planets formed and all, and it was very precise and accurate in terms of science, that just would have been, confusing to all these people who wouldn't really have been able to understand the science at the time. So, we kind of fudged it for them. So this is kind of what they believe. Okay? The sacred books, being essentially religious, are consequently necessarily living. Now here we go again. They're living, so they change. What's alive is kind of changing. The sacred books aren't living, right? Sacred books are the sacred books. Okay. The modernists, losing all sense of control, go so far as to proclaim as true and legitimate everything that is explained by life. Okay? So they proclaim as true and legitimate everything that is explained by life, which is not, what the traditional faith was. Okay? So, let's listen to some of the things that Pius the Tenth has to say about this. Okay? And he's not happy. Okay? We, venerable brethren, for whom there is but one and only truth, and who hold that the sacred books, written under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, have God for their author. That's declare that this is equivalent to attributing to God himself the lie of utility or officious lie. And we say with St. Augustine, in an authority so high, admit but one officious lie, and there will not remain a single passage of those apparently difficult to practice or to believe, which on the same most pernicious rule may not be explained as a lie uttered by the author willfully and to serve a purpose. And thus it will come about, the Holy Doctor continues, that everybody will believe and refuse to believe what he likes or dislikes. Does that sound familiar? You have people believing and not believing what they want in our church. I mean, this is what we call cafeteria Catholics, right? Now, an officious lie, here's the definition: a lie told as an act of kindness to further another's interests. Okay? So, God is being nice to us by lying to us. That's what the inference that Pius the Tenth is drawing from their opinion of God giving us a convenient little lie to make us feel happy and denying the truth of Scripture. And he says that you can't do that. Once you start doing that, there's no stopping. Once you say this one was a lie, and what else is a lie? You know, well, maybe we want to say that it's a lie now that we're just saying it so people can understand that Jesus was saying that adultery was wrong. That divorce was wrong. Can't get a divorce. Well, he was only making that up. I don't know. You can't start believing that this was some kind of a lie. He was just saying it to impress people. He wasn't really serious about that. Kind of reminds me of my cousin Vinny line when he says, "You are serious about that?" Yeah. God is serious about what he says. He's not, making up stuff. Okay. Let's go on. Let's hear what more St. Pius X has to say. But the modernists pursue their way gaily. I like that he used that word. They grant also that certain arguments adduced in the sacred scriptures, like those, for example, which are based on the prophecies, have no rational foundation to rest on. But they will defend even these as artifices of preaching which are justified by life. So, we justify that we have these irrational prophecies in our work because they're justified by life, by what we do because we're alive. Do they stop here? No, indeed. For they are ready to admit, nay, to proclaim that Christ himself manifestly erred in determining the time when the coming of the kingdom of God was to take place. And they tell us that we must not be surprised at this, since even Christ was subject to the laws of life. I mean, I guess because you're subject to the laws of life, you have to fudge things and lie. I don't know. All right. Let's move on. More stuff from Pius X. Here we go. In short, to maintain and defend these theories, they do not hesitate to declare that the noblest homage that can be paid to the infinite is to make it the object of contradictory propositions. But when they justify even contradiction, what is it that they will refuse to justify? All right? So, you can't justify contradictory propositions. When things are contradicted, that's kind of a puzzle, right? They are already known to be praised by the rationalists as fighting under the same banner, and they not only plume themselves on these encomiums, which are kind of salary to them, but would only provoke nausea in a real Catholic, but use them as an offset to the reprimands of the Church. So an encomium is a speech or piece of writing that praises someone or something highly. So you're getting praise from these rationalists who are mostly atheists, right? They're saying, hey, good on you doing this and confronting the Church about these things. And a real Catholic would be provoked to nausea if they were praised by the rationalists this way. But they love them, the modernists love them, because they're trying to rationalize our faith into what the rationalists believe, and it doesn't work. Faith just isn't consistent with this kind of thinking. All right, where you reduce everything to material. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the subjective arguments. So those are all the objective arguments. So here's the subjective arguments. Immanence. They endeavor, in fact, to persuade their non-believer that down in the very deeps of his nature and his life lie the need and the desire for religion. And this, not a religion of any kind, but the specific religion known as Catholicism, which they say is absolutely postulated by the perfect development of life. Okay? So you may have heard some of these apologists do this. They will talk to somebody, and they'll say, well, deep inside they got this urge. They need the Catholic faith, and they know it. It's inside of them. And they try to kind of water this little seed that they think is already in them, and make them experience the true faith. It's all about experience again, right? It is only the moderate modernists who make this appeal to an exigency for the Catholic faith. Okay, right. So what he's saying is there's the branches of this modernism, and the moderate ones say this is what you can do. Well, now let's hear what the others say. As for the others, who might be called integralists, they would show to the non-believer, hidden away in the very depths of his being, the very germ which Christ himself bore in his conscience, and which he bequeathed to the world. Okay? So the integralists would want to persuade them that there's this little germ of Jesus in them already. Okay? It's not just an urge to find the Catholic faith and to believe the Catholic faith. It's just innate in them. It's immanent in them. It's inside of them. It's internal to them. But there's actually this germ of Jesus Christ himself in there. Okay. So let's hear Pius the Tenth sum up here. Okay. Such, venerable brethren, is a summary description of the apologetic method of the modernists, in perfect harmony, as you may see, with their doctrines, methods, and doctrines brimming over with errors, made not for edification, but for destruction, not for the formation of Catholics, but for the plunging of Catholics into heresy, methods and doctrines that would be fatal to any religion. Okay, so that is what Pius X had to say about the modernist as apologists. As you can see, these things are extant in the Catholic Church right now. This is how these guys operate. You can find them everywhere. And it's kind of the way, it's the mainstream of the church. But here's Pius the Tenth, a pope and a saint, saying he doesn't like it. And this isn't what we should do. So what happened? Where did this change come from? Where did we go from having a pope who was saying, this is all bad stuff, and we got to stop it, to this is how we operate? That is the question, isn't it? Okay? So that's it for this episode of The Smoke of Satan. And next time on The Smoke of Satan, we have the Modernist as Reformer. Okay? That will be episode 12. I think there's going to be 15 of these. So we're coming up on the end soon. Okay? And we will see you next time on The Smoke of Satan. Again, my name is Joseph Cillo Jr. You can check out my books, When the Wood is Dry, Blind Prophet, and Merry Freaking Christmas, and Edgy Christmas Comedy. Okay? That's a Christmas gift for atheists. If you know an atheist, give him one. Okay? We will see. He won't like it. He'll like the beginning. He won't like the end. Because in the end, he gives up his atheism. Did I spoil the ending? Well, he starts out dead, so, All right. We will see you next time on The Smoke of Satan. Again, I'm Joseph Cillo Jr. Take care. God bless.